Hi, it's Irma, and today I'll be discussing how my skills developed throughout the process of creating my A level media studies final project. My production skills, particularly in camera work, developed considerably. At the start of the project, my understanding of cinematography was quite basic. I mainly focused on capturing footage that was clear, centered, and focused. However, as I progressed, I began to view the camera not just as a tool for recording, but as a storytelling device that could express emotion, perspective, and narrative tone. For example, in this scene, I wanted to immediately draw the audience's attention to the engagement ring and flowers, emphasizing the romantic and meaningful nature of the setup. One of the biggest areas of growth was my ability to use framing, composition, and movement more thoughtfully. For instance, I learned how to use symmetry and mirror shots to suggest control or vulnerability, something I used deliberately in this shot where the male character fixes his suit in the mirror, and the clean and centered shot suggests his optimism and preparation for something meaningful, contrasting sharply with the emotional spiral that follows. Filming with the iPhone 15 gave me both flexibility and new technical challenges to overcome. At first, I simply relied on automatic settings, but I soon began exploring manual features like locking focus and exposure, using cinematic mode in scenes like this to add depth of field, and switching lenses to achieve different looks for different moments. In more intimate moments like the POV shots, I chose a more focused shot to draw the viewer's attention into the character's headspace, highlighting the female's disinterest and the male's nervousness. The contrast between his expressions and her calm, composed demeanor also helped me highlight how she was in control of the narrative, a theme I wanted to show throughout the film. In this scene particularly, I manually shifted the focus from the male protagonist's back to the female protagonist's movement. I did this because it marked a breakthrough moment when the female delivers the news of the breakup. I wanted the audience's attention to be drawn to the pivotal moment and to focus on the female protagonist since she is the one causing the intense shift in the film's emotional tone. Furthermore, maintaining continuity between shots like these was a skill I developed through extensive practice, focused on ensuring the audience could clearly understand the emotions the protagonist was experiencing at this moment. By using a medium shot to capture his facial expressions and draw focus to the movement he takes out the ring, I led the audience to believe he was giving up, only for him to suddenly change his mind. This unexpected shift helps capture and maintain the audience's interest. I also experimented with camera movement, carefully following characters' handheld shots to create a more dynamic and engaging visual style. This handheld leading tracking shot of him running, for example, was used to create an immersive experience, conveying a sense of urgency and allowing the audience to feel the character's panic and emotional intensity in that moment. Another area where I developed significantly was in learning how to visually communicate mood and emotional shifts using only the camera. Since the entire scene had no spoken dialogue, I had to rely on facial expressions, body language, and the timing and composition of shots to tell my story effectively. And in one of my favorite shots, both aesthetically and symbolically, I used focus and framing to emphasize the emotional distance between the characters. Initially, the focus is on the female protagonist as she walks away. Then, as the male protagonist stops behind her at the top of the stairs, the depth of field shifts. She becomes blurred in the foreground while he comes into focus in the background, standing still and watching her. She briefly looks back at him while he remains in focus, emphasizing his lingering emotional attachment before she turned away completely, exiting the frame. This deliberate shift in focus symbolizes the emotional disconnect between them and subtly positions the male character as the one now left behind, both physically and emotionally. Once she's fully out of the frame, he begins to walk down the stairs. The composition of this moment also carries symbolic weight. She exits towards the left of the stairs and out of the film, while he is positioned more to the right and higher up in the frame, suggesting his hesitation and isolation. This contrast in spatial placement reinforces their emotional separation. I was particularly proud of how this shot turned out, not only because of its visual appeal, but because of how effectively it captured the emotional transition without the need for dialogue. This sequence, which was inspired by Meet Joe Black, where we cut between both characters walking away, pausing, turning back as if they might go after each other, then changing their minds and continuing to walk away. I wanted this back and forth to visually express their internal conflict and emotional tension without relying on dialogue. Filming this part was extremely difficult. As you're watching, you might not notice, but we were constantly interrupted by cars driving past. Some of the parked cars you see here weren't even there later, which created a lot of continuity issues and made it extremely difficult for us to record. We had to do multiple retakes, and this was the most challenging and time consuming part of the entire filming process. Every time we got a good take, another car would either enter the frame or one in the background would move, forcing us to reset. It was also tricky to get the matching shots to line up, making sure the characters were in the right positions, facing the right directions, and that the focus was exactly where we needed it. Getting the perfect rhythm between the cuts and maintaining visual consistency took a lot of trial and error, but in the end, I think it really helped sell the emotional push and pull between the characters. Finally, he stops and looks back, leading into the shots of him running back to her, followed by the cut stalking montage. In the stalking sequence, I used a shift in depth of field to direct the viewer's attention, moving the focus from the female protagonist to the male. This clearly shows that he is stalking her, especially with his all black getup, symbolizing the darkness in his mind. I also used wider lens to exaggerate space and discomfort. This wide shot of him running after her was a deliberate choice to visually emphasize the distance he's closing between them, building tension as he pursues her. By using a wide shot, I was able to capture the full scope of his movement through the space, highlighting both his determination and the urgency of the moment before he finally reaches her and stops her. This shot helps the audience feel the physical and emotional chase unfolding in real time. This particular shot is one of my favorites. To capture it perfectly, I had to get on top of a garden with a steep slope that faced the pathway where the scene takes place. This vantage point allowed me to frame them beautifully in the center as she turns back just as he grabs her hand. I chose a wide shot to ensure this entire scene was visible, capturing both characters' movements and the surrounding space, which added to the emotional impact. The composition and lighting came together really well, making it a visually striking and deeply meaningful moment that I absolutely loved. This imagined montage ends just as she turns back, cutting to him watching her walk away with a solemn expression. The choice to frame him dead center as he finally turns away and walks off, followed by the screen fading to black, creates a powerful visual punctuation that underscores his emotional acceptance and the finality of their separation. Working on the scene helped me develop my skill in using framing and pacing to convey complex emotions without dialogue. By carefully positioning the character in the center of the frame and allowing darkness to take over, I learned how to evoke a strong emotional response from the audience through visual storytelling alone. This scene taught me the importance of restraint and timing in filmmaking, knowing when to hold a shot and let the imagery speak for itself, making it a rewarding finale to the shooting process. Overall, this project pushed me out of my comfort zone and helped me develop a deeper understanding of how camera work can shape an audience's emotional response, from technical improvements like mastering, stabilization, and exposure to creative choices around color theory and framing. I now feel much more confident in my ability to contribute meaningfully to a visual production. This project made me realize that even without dialogue, a strong narrative built through thoughtful camera work can still connect powerfully with an audience.